So thank you everyone for being here today. And we're going to continue right along where we left off last night in our Collective Healings from Mother Earth webinar. And all right, I'm going to, as usual, I'll start with a prayer of gratitude, and then we'll do a little description of what is energy healing for the new people. And then I will go into a recap of yesterday so that we have a kind of lay our foundation and set down the basis for today's session. And then we'll go into today's session. Okay. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. This live webinar. Thank you for being the ancestors and the families. Thank you for being the divine in all of us and through us, blessing our time together with the ability to work concisely and efficiently. Thank you for blessing speech and the flow of wisdom. Thank you for the qualities and aspects of consciousness which heal. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom. Okay. So, what is energy healing? Energy healing is using consciousness to heal consciousness. And because the physiology, because everything that's manifest is a outgrowth, or it is a construct of consciousness, then when we use consciousness, our awareness, pure perception, pure awareness, pure attention, to fold into the field of our consciousness, we are able to, it is possible to make modifications in the field of consciousness. We want to use consciousness as the medicine, basically, as the tool. And really that's what medicines do, is they communicate a level of Earth's intelligence, right? The plant intelligence is communicated to the body, and then the body takes that intelligence and uses it to modify its own intelligence, like an upgrade. It's like being in school, right? You just, you get a new piece of information, and that new piece of information is like a tool. So when the plant intelligence comes in, even foods that we eat, the foods have various values and qualities of intelligence. And when they come into the body takes that intelligence and then reforms itself out of that intelligence. And so what is in the food? What is in an apple? Cosmic intelligence is in an apple, because the apple, if you just look at it mechanically, right, that the photons are in the sun, and the photons are ancient, and they've been existing there, record keeping the entire story of our universe, because they exist for billions of years. So the photons, each photon is like a little package of information, and then that comes out of the sun and down to the earth into the leaves of the plant, and the leaves then transform the photon energy through photosynthesis into sugars, and the sugars go into the apple, and then the apple, and all of this is the same intelligence, but it's just changing form, right? It goes into the apple, and then we eat the apple. And what we do is we break that apple material down till it's just a tiny, tiny, tiny little molecules and atoms of apple, and from there into the mitochondria. And the mitochondria take those little molecules and transform them back into energy. So it's the cosmic wisdom comes through the plant, transformed into sugars, into our body, gets transformed from our body back into its essential nature, which is consciousness. So even our food creates upgrades. Even the air, when we breathe, the air is full of life force, and that life force communicates that which we all share in common. The air is all shared in common. So anyway, all right, so consciousness, why not? Why not that the consciousness, that our pure perception has direct access to that cosmic information that the photons have access to? How old is consciousness? It's very old. The answer is it's old as the universe. It's older than the universe. It's even before there was a universe. The consciousness that flows, the awareness that flows through us is ancient, eternal, constant. So why not from that consciousness can we extract the information that we need to promote the transformations that will allow our bodies to heal? And in today's webinar, we're going to talk about promoting the transformations that will help our earth to heal too, because beautiful discussion. This is now, that was the recap of what's energy healing. Now the recap of yesterday's session, and particularly after yesterday's session, it was a lovely discussion, and some really interesting points came up, including the point that our physical bodies are basically extensions of Earth's body. We've talked about that principle a little bit before, but this is a very appropriate webinar to talk about it. Our bodies, we are extensions of Mother Earth. A balance, one of the beautiful points that came up was that the balance of minerals and water, the chemistry in the water of our bodies and all that are identical to the balance of minerals and water construction that's on, like the amount of salts in our water of our body and so forth, are the same as the waters of the earth, the oceans. Yesterday's session started out with a very big healing for families. And I felt that it was important for all of us, and I'm just now, right now, checking in on the group, checking in on everybody a little more deeply, a little more intimately. That each of us is a collective. And so there was a healing at the beginning of yesterday's session to integrate the collective nature a little more deeply for each person, so that as we work together in our healing circle, but also as we work together as we work as individuals on our own issues, we're able to draw more consciousness, more fullness into that experience of doing energy healing. Because it can happen in families sometimes that people are not people don't necessarily have harmonious relationships in families, right? A lot of times we'll choose family members, or we'll be in families that support our ability to grow and evolve really well, but it may not necessarily be relationships that are that easy, because a lot of times it's discomfort that motivates a person to make changes. So in spite of that dynamic, the healing yesterday was designed to support an integration when it comes to the process of energy healing. So that even if some members of the family don't think that energy healing is a thing, or some members of the family are opposed to whatever you do, or some members of the family are locked into their own cycles of self-destruction, or whatever's going on, whatever might be going on with your family, that in spite of all those dynamics, as a collective, everyone is able to work together to promote highest good and best evolutionary transformation. That's the important thing. So that was one healing. Another long section of healing yesterday had to do with looking at a kind of an underpinning of sort of dense energy that's in the world's collective, based on trauma and stress that individuals experience at the time of death. A lot of people experience trauma at the time of birth too. So the transition points are usually highly dramatic. I mean, not always. Sometimes, a person's death isn't highly dramatic, but I know I've got some wonderful hospice people and near-death experience people in on these webinars, and I'm sure that if we look into that, it becomes evident that there's always a kind of intensity, a sort of almost overwhelming intensity associated with the transition in and out of the physical form. So we looked at that and did some healing work for that particular energy. All right. Finally, the last question of the day was about the oceans and if some kind of nice healing could be done for the waters of our earth. And that made so much sense to me. That was actually a question that came up at a previous webinar as well. But it's particularly important because getting into today's session now we've had the recaps, it's particularly important because the warming of our earth is actually taking place. Most of the heating effect is being absorbed by our oceans. So those of us who live on land, we have a little bit of an illusory experience that we're in right now because it doesn't necessarily seem, we notice some warmer temperatures than before, and I think in certain areas particularly, like I think Southern California and certain places that are traditionally known to be quite temperate, are noticing higher temperatures. But a lot of places, like here in Iowa, it doesn't seem that different, really, from what it was previous years, particularly. However, except in the wintertime, we quit having the kind of snowstorms we used to have. But the oceans, the scientists who are measuring the oceans are noticing a much steeper rise in temperature in the oceans than we're noticing on the land. So that means that the oceans are kind of catching the brunt of the global warming changes that are taking place. So I'm just going to start right there. Also, I'm feeling this morning in our circle, before we get started, it feels like a little bit less coherent than sometimes. So I think I'm just going to also take a minute and just see what I can feel into the group and how we can tie everything together so that there's more of a coherent, orderly feeling in our work this morning. See, we took like 20 or 30 minutes yesterday to do that with the family healing. But today, recapping that, one of the things I'm noticing is that channel of light that sort of runs through the center of our group, just like the channels of light that run through the crown of the head, through the body. There's one for the center of our healing group. And that needed a little bit of, it's like it was bent. It looked a little bit bent. And it's possible that that happened because of the work we were doing yesterday, healing the devas of the earth. A lot of the earth devas are rope-like or snake-like forms of energy that run through our earth. And we see them manifest out to the surface as like rivers and valleys and, various types of earth shapes, channels, even wind channels that flow through the air, like the places where the birds migrate and that sort of thing. These channels that run through our earth, there's also a channel that runs through our healing circle. Oh, I see. It's accommodating. Varieties of different, these channels, they exist at, the devas of the earth exist at a causal level, and yesterday I was explaining how the causal is the deepest manifest level of this reality, very abstract, outside the range of space and time, but from there all the way up through the astral level, which is the level of, it's also a collective level of reality, but it's mostly comprised of threads of consciousness, threads or beams or channels of energy. I was getting downloads about that this morning. Oh, that's why. Okay, right. So just to share with you the latest that came up this morning, early this morning, new information for me, always such a huge privilege and pleasure to share with you guys, is that now that we've been doing these energy healings for a little while, we're all aware of the fact that we're tied into the web of life. And that's that astral level where all these threads or beams of consciousness flow. So when you have an intention or an idea, it flows out of your body like a little thread, like a little wormy thing. It flows out. I'm going to the store, and there it goes. And already that thread is at the store even before you get there, kind of clearing the path and make sure that, the traffic patterns are good and so forth. So each one of us tends to, we are aware that our thoughts, ideas, beliefs, patterns, desires, etc., have this influence on the web of life around us, at least in our immediate environment, at least between here and the store, right? So, so what we do is we'll create a sort of an orderly space in the web of life, or at least directly around us. And when any kind of impulse comes up, particularly an emotional impulse, it moves. This is important for this today's healing, for the collective, for the earth. It's very important because we need to understand the dynamics of how energy healing actually affects the field of consciousness, which is the earth. And then from there, intelligent moves, right? So what happens is it goes out from us and it sort of stretches out into the astral field and creates order as far as our own concept or our own capability to spread our awareness or attention. So most people have organized the web of life, which is directly immediately around them, to accommodate their particular belief systems and understandings and desires and intentions, etc. And so what that does is it causes these areas in the web. So there's kind of like, I've got my astral body, and then I've kind of got my web of life expression, like the way my astral body interfaces with the web of life near me. Then outside of that, there are places where there's kind of like a coagulation. That's what it looked like to me. Like around each person, there's sort of a field that's kind of like orderly. And then in between, like imagine you've got one person here and one person here, and the web of life around them is orderly, but they're slightly different. But in the in-between section in here, what happens is the threads, they kind of they condense down, they become very fine, and there's a tendency in the gaps between our field of influence for the energies to go back to source, if that makes sense. So at the denser levels of the web of life, they're like bigger, sturdier, more manifest, more denser threads or streams of consciousness. And in the case of Earth Davis, they become fully manifest as rivers and streams and valleys and air flows and so forth. But at the finer level of the astral body, it becomes very, these threads, they get very, very fine, like delicate, like little hair threads or something. And then where they're not being influenced, they fall back into being. And at that really fine level, just before the web of life hits that causal level of the physiology, it's so fine, it's like a mist. It's like there's a mist. I just realized what's wrong with my visuals. Tom, you'll have to cut this out of please forgive me, everybody, but I don't want to blind everybody here. I'm sorry.
We're fine too.
Yeah, but I can see that it's a different light than it was last night, and I had my camera. Oh, hello. Now my head isn't simply beaming a light at everybody. Thank you. Please say that. Okay, that's better. It's just a fine thing. But from my perspective, I'm like, whoa, there's light shining out of my head. Anyway, okay. As a collective, we have collective intention. Now, the healing that happened yesterday for families supports your ability to extend that influence into the web of life through your own beliefs, intentions, ideas, etc., and then through that level of, oh, yay, and then through that level to the family, so through their intentions and beliefs and habits and desires, etc. So that's what's happening, is that then what it does is it's like multiplying oneself, so that the effect in the web of life is extended. Also, I'm seeing at the astral level of everyone's physiology, very beautiful, kind of like a radio transmission, 24/7 radio transmission of folding back into source and folding back into source. With every stroke of experience, with every stroke of intention, with every stroke of desire, with every belief that manifests up, the belief manifests up, and then the stroke brings it back to source. So it's like double checking everything. It's like bouncing every experience off of that original template, the original blueprint for the universe, the original intention for the divine to manifest in this material level of creation. This is an alignment that's happening. It's an extension of the healing yesterday for the families to support an alignment for all family members as well. Very sweet and very important. Very important. This is going to help all your family so much. And it also will help enhance the energy medicine that came in for the families, that very light, very soft, very, honoring and reverent energy for all the ancestors. It's going to help them as well. Good, good. Because that light medicine is born of source material. So it's supporting that to be more pure, more integrated, more present. Beautiful. Okay, lots of questions coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and bring okay, so here's a question. It says, could you please talk about the relationship between the difference in physical location and effectiveness of healing and growth of consciousness, if any, especially embodiment part of it? All right, so first of all, every location has its own unique energy frequency. Just like each part of the body, like you could say, well, consciousness is flowing through my whole body. But the way consciousness manifests in my head is it manifests as awareness. And the way it manifests in my heart is it manifests as feeling. And whereas it manifests in the gut, it manifests as knowing. So there's a kind of a knowingness there, connected to the wholeness, connected to the collective there. So just as the physical body has its landscape, so the world has a landscape. And absolutely the laws of nature in specific areas will have effects. The principle here is to be aware, because the more sensitive one is to the quality of intelligence or consciousness in a particular area, the better one is able to bring through that awareness in that astral causal level of self, because that's where we share reality, even with the land that we stand on, we share. From that level, find the means of inner construction, organization of the inner landscape to support best harmony and integration, to support the land where you're staying with loving reverence. And in so doing, what happens is you gain the favor of the laws of nature in that area. And then it's a better communication flow rises between you and the space that you're in. And that, the result of that is making better decisions, being clearer about what's actually going on. We talked a little bit, one of the healings from yesterday was about increased synchrony in the individual experience and the collective experience. And it was fun because as soon as we did that, and the environment immediately answered back with a moment of synchrony. So that was cool. All right. I just remember I promised people I would do questions more toward the end. So I love you all dearly, and I will be taking questions in about half an hour. But thank you for sending them in. The oceans. We come back to the oceans because we ended last night's session with a question about the waters and the oceans. Now we all know, probably almost everyone's familiar with the work of Dr. Emoto, who did the experiment, the science experiment has been repeated many times now, in most junior high schools across the country, where water containers have a label on them of a particular emotion or feeling, and then the water's frozen, and then looking at the crystals under the microscope and seeing how the jars that hold the label of something sweet, like forgiveness or love or thankfulness or gratitude, something like that, create very beautiful, orderly crystals. And the ones that have more dissonant, more destructive laws of nature feelings tend to be disorderly crystals. So we know our emotions affect the oceans. Ooh, our emotions affect the oceans. But what is that emotion, that one? We look for that one emotion because we're a big, powerful collective in this healing. So what is that one emotion that would go to the oceans to support the highest health of the oceans? And last night I was thinking that when I was going to bed, thinking, God, the oceans are so big. And I'm kind of doing like a remote scanning through the oceans of like, what are some of the issues that the animals are having and how do they function? And there are all these mind-blowing things about like the way they perceive reality is so different from human perception and so forth. Like how can we as humans actually promote a healing? But then it became evident that it's actually very simple. Honoring the sacred body of the ocean on this earth, the sacred status of the ocean on this earth as the mother of all life. The intention is that pure source energy manifests in the ocean in the most complete, integrated, and healthy manner. Because that's what everything at this relative level of creation is doing. We're in a play field or a laboratory or something where that which is unmanifest, that unmanifest source of creation, is experimenting with its ability to create form in this three-dimensional solid state. I'm also seeing the water itself. I'm looking at it in layers right now. And I'm seeing that there's the water in its three-dimensional state, and then there's like the essence of the water. In Vedic terms, it's called tanmatra. There's tanmatras for the different elements. And that's kind of like the essence of that element. Water's also associated with taste. So the range of the reality of the waters is opening and revealing itself. And that is then offered into the state of silence, into the source of creation, with the intention of how do we heal? What do the waters need? What do the waters want? So I'm seeing a twofold condition in the waters. I'm seeing at the subtler end of the range of what we think of to be the waters, the tanmatras and the more subtle aspects of the water, that the waters are still holding nicely to their original blueprints. They're still cognizant, the waters of the earth, the oceans are still cognizant of their initial intention for existence. But then at a more gross level of the waters, I'm seeing denser forms present. And a lot of it seems to be basically discordant feelings, seeing mostly discordant feelings. So as always in energy healing, we take the symptom and we follow it back to its seed, because we want to better to take the weed out by its root than to have to pick out 1,000 weeds next season after it's flowered. So So there's this element of the oceans being the dumping ground, and this energy is responsible for these discordant feelings. In our own bodies, the dumping ground is the colon. It's also the lymphatic system, right? So this area of our bodies, we need to restructure. We're restructuring now down at a deeper level. This we would call, if we're the attitude or the idea, the belief that it's like a dumping ground, would be at an astral level. So I'm also looking at the interface between the astral field, the web of life and the oceans, and seeing how the web of life looks in the waters as opposed to how it looks out here where we are. You'd think I would have done this ages ago, but I didn't. I'm doing it now for the first time. I'm so used to working with people, right? So often, or at least forms that are residing more in this airy environment, not so much in the waters. So I'm definitely seeing a different type of distribution of the cords or threads of the web of life in the oceans than I see out here with us as humans. And we just did a big description of that a second ago, what it looks like out here with us. But in the oceans, they're like there are finer spaces. With us as humans, at the causal field of creation, we create we've portioned off segments of the causal field. And some of these portions that we create are really big. But in the oceans, the tendency is there's more of a cognizance of the shared reality in the ocean. All the beings that live there are much more clearly aware of being all part of the same system and all sharing their realities together. Oh, and one of the things I noticed was, like, God bless the dolphins, they have two brains, right? So for a dolphin, when one side of the brain is in waking state, the other side of the brain is in sleep state, then it switches off. So what that means is they literally experience an overlay of the three states of consciousness, all overlaying simultaneously. They're experiencing waking consciousness at the exact same time. They're also experiencing dream state of consciousness, or they're also experiencing sleep state of consciousness. So you can imagine, maybe you can imagine that integrates the type of closeness that we have in dream state of consciousness with all the other beings, because there's an overlap in dream state. Even though dream states, the reality of dream states is very malleable, we actually share common realities in our dream state, but it's like there's a lot more room for manipulating details. There's more room for manipulating details of the reality in dream state than there are in sleep state. So, in waking state. So what it means is, for the dolphins, even waking state seems more malleable. Anyway, the shared reality there allows for, I would say, smaller areas, smaller segmentation of the causal field. Also, it seems as if I'm digging back to the seed here, right? Because I'm always looking for the karma that's behind it. So I'm looking for that. Where's that karma? So that's why I'm looking at the way the field, the astral and causal fields, construct themselves in the waters and the oceans. Oh, so I'm seeing there's like an underwater river that runs from, like, up around Norway down through the Atlantic and comes down around the Cape of Hope. Is it the Cape of Hope? Around the bottom of Africa. So there's fear in the causal realm. So that's the first thing. We can deal with that. Yay. Our collective can deal with that. So we're going in and clearing fear from the waters, from the causal realm. It gets carried a little bit, or spread around through this river that moves around. It goes around Africa, and then it goes around the India and Asia, and then comes back up the Pacific. It's a really big flowing form right there. Really big naga wrapping itself around the earth right there. And the elimination of fear is not just an abstract concept. The elimination of fear is founded, it has a foundation. And the foundation is the revelation that came out of yesterday's session, which was that because remember, we're getting rid of karma basically, and karma sitting in the causal field as fear. So that karma is like a fear-related karma in there that's affecting this great snake-like being that wraps around the world's oceans. This understanding the truth being the one leg of Dharma which one can lean on and it will not crumble under our weight, can be used to bolster or uphold the other three legs of Dharma. And so just the review, and I have my paper, but there's some Vedic names for these, but basically truth, that's the one that's bolstering. And then it's upholding purity, austerity, and compassion. Purity, austerity, compassion. What? Kindliness? Cleanliness. Oh, did I not say it? Thank you. So, oh, did I say it twice? Austerity, cleanliness, purity. Purity and cleanliness, same thing. Pardon?
Sanskrit, shawach for purity, sattva, tapas, shawach, and ahimsa.
And ahimsa.
Austerity.
It's tapas.
There are Vedic terms for these forms. Thank you. All right. Truth, because it's being utilized by our collective as a stabilizing factor, is also integrating us with our, we could call brothers and sisters in the ocean, with the beings of the ocean. Because even though our nervous systems are very different, and we're therefore experiencing reality in a very different way from the beings of the ocean, the truth is still the truth. And it still is something that we can share. And when we're sharing that truth, when we're leaning on the angle of truth to uphold these other three values so that full dharmic integration can take place in that area of the ocean where the fear was sitting, the karma was sitting in the form of fear. So it's eliminating the fear, it's washing out the fear. Where that's happening, it's also supporting our ability to expand our own comprehension of what is truth. Because we get to enjoy it, we get to see it and experience it, not only from a human perspective, but from life force in the ocean perspective as well. And the ocean herself is a great living force. And the fear is born of that feeling of the increase of the heat. So the question is, can we decrease the heat in the ocean? And the answer is we have. And we've worked with this energy before in previous webinars. I don't know if you remember, but there's a cooling, there's a form of consciousness which cools. And the original blueprint of it came to this instrument from this person, from space. It was originally something that was held in cosmic archives that were in space, but that there's a way that consciousness can form itself to become very, very cool. Very cold, and very cold, like so cold that if you use it in its pure value, it could destroy. So it has to be diluted. It has to be diluted. So that cooling quality, that capability of consciousness to cool, is being offered into this situation, into the field of being, so that the source of creation can look at that and decide exactly how to dilute it, exactly what quantities. Does it need to be flavored in some particular way? Does it need to be modified in order to accommodate the needs of the ocean? Whatever needs to be done with that particular quality of consciousness. It's definitely related to the awakening of beings all over the earth. And I think we've talked about this in the past, that not just humans are, not only is there kind of a big awakening going on with human beings all over the earth, but there's the awakening extends to all things of the earth. So the cooling is related to the effect that takes place in the mind when waking awareness, with conscious awareness, transcends thought and settles into the source of creation. It's a cooling. There's a cooling there. Becomes less active. Becomes less active. So the cooling is blessed, you could say. The cooling quality of consciousness is blessed by the mother of creation as it's given to the oceans, so that the beings of the oceans experience it as their own minds transcending. It softens the waters. It softens their space. So we can increase, here in Fairfield, we talk about the superradiance effect created by many people meditating all at the same time, many people having that experience of settling of the mind at the same time. Well, we just can increase our superradiance numbers there big time. We have the beings of the oceans transcending. All of a sudden, our superradiance numbers have multiplied dramatically. I'm seeing two things happening. I'm seeing some of the beings of the oceans saying to me that it's increasing intelligence in the heart chakra areas of their bodies, but for a lot of them, they're actually experiencing digestive anomalies, which has never happened to them before. You know, a lot of the animals just naturally have a tendency to stay like healthier generally, but they're ingesting materials in the waters which haven't been suitable to their nature. Plastics, yeah. And so we're seeing animals, ocean animals, who are having digestive problems. And so the question is if their ability to transcend will support their ability to process their experience, because digestion's all about processing experience. I'm feeling a lot of compassion flowing right now from our group to the animals of the ocean, and support for their ability to expand their capability to process their experience. It's the intelligence of the heart, which also that sits right, you know, you eat the food and then this big body of intelligence is like the wisdom that the food passes through the wisdom center, so that as it goes into the actual processing centers of the digestive tract, it's got that resource of wisdom behind it, so that the processing of experience is something that is fueled or is supported by the broadest possible range of understanding, comprehension, recognition, appreciation. I might sneeze in a second. Almost certain that's going to happen. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'm just letting it settle. It's cooling down. It's cooling. Yeah, cool right down. Okay, good. Maybe a little drink of water. I want to go back and check in on that great big snake-like form that encircles our Earth, and by the way is responsible for the jet stream, among other things. Because just a little aside, but maybe also related, is that there's the Earth. The Earth, you can imagine here, has warmer temperatures around the equator and then cooler at the caps. And so what's happening is that the ice at the caps is melting. I understand that all the old ice at the North Pole actually melted this year, first summer ever for a complete melting of the old ice that was up there. And so because it's warm here and cool at the ends, then what happens is the warmer airs and the warmer waters are attracted to go into the cooler areas. So they go out to the cool areas and they cool down. And once they're cool, they make those little underwater rivers that that bring those streams back into the equator area where they warm back up again. And it's this kind of pushing and pulling of the temperature across the face of the earth that's responsible for the manifestation of the jet stream. So without the cool air at the caps, the jet stream might not be able to move as efficiently as it moved before. Or it may not be able to move in the same patterns as it moved before. We actually don't know what it's going to do because we've never run this experiment before as humans. But we do know that our ability to produce food is based on the changes in climate and temperature produced by the jet stream. So that if we think of the jet stream as a living force, right? It's kind of like a rope-like intelligence that's encircling our Earth. What we're doing is anchored into the field of pure being. We are supporting an opening of channels of love and communication and all the four qualities of Dharma between the source of creation and that great being. We are holding, and right now we're just holding it really, really silent because we're dealing with something really big here. It's very big. So I don't even know if it's going to notice us. We're like making our little offering as humans. It's a good thing we have our families to kind of back us up, right? So we're making our offerings as families, wondering if we can extend that offering, if we can use the web of life to, and that's just getting a yes on that, to connect up with, oh, very interesting. Okay. I was going to say to connect up with other energy healers around the world who might be interested in adding their influence into ours. But what came back to me was the animals of the ocean that we just did a healing for. They are very happy to join us in this endeavor. So yeah, they're healers too. We're anchoring to the silent source of creation and offering a flow, a dedication to maintain the open channels of flow between the source of creation and that great, massive, snake-like intelligence that wraps around our earth. And it hears it when the animals of the ocean join us, it hears it very nicely. It hears it nicely. Oh, and this is so cool. I love them, those animals of the ocean. They happen to have ways of verbally communicating, making sounds, which are very nice, clear representations of the source energy of creation. Just like as humans, we have like the Vedas, the priests chant the Vedic sounds, and the Vedic sounds are exact replicas of the way source energy moves or transforms when it goes from unmanifest through the manifest field of creation. So the animals also have. They're talking. They're talking to that great being. And their speech has the ability to clear some of those channels of where the source energy wasn't fully able to integrate with the jet stream energy around the earth. There was that fear that it could break down, that the relationship would break down. And the answer is no, it's not breaking down. It's being healed instead. It's transforming to a more efficient form. It's transforming to a new form, a more evolved form. It's basically this little problem with our jet stream is being leveraged as a tool to support an evolutionary transformation for the jet stream, to allow it to function possibly in a different manner than it has been functioning, but in a in an even more enlightened manner. There have been times on Earth where the whole Earth was kind of tropical. That's happened. And it didn't break the Earth. And it didn't destroy life. So anything is possible. Now the gratitude is flowing back. And I'm feeling like a glue, the gratitude is flowing, and it's creating kind of a glue-like effect between all of us small beings on the surface of the Earth who benefit so deeply from the enriching flow of the jet stream with the jet stream. And as that flow of gratitude and love moves through our collective circle, I suggest to just offer it all back to the source of creation, where it will multiply, where it gets a chance to spiral out to infinity and back to the jet stream again. Because, you know, we really, I don't think any one of us as humans in a single lifetime can express sufficiently the amount of gratitude deserved by the jet stream of this Earth. We all owe it a great deal of gratitude. And it's just the heart, it's just flowing back to the source, back to source, back to source, back to source, back to source through all of us. And it's interesting as that's happening, it's like it's happening in multiple waves, from the jet stream to us, to the source, to the jet stream to us, to the source, like that, back and forth. It's like rocking, right? And as that happens, it's causing the transformation to occur, the actual healing transformation for our world, for our jet stream, for our beings. I've experienced this before with other collectives in healing, healing consultations and stuff like that, but this is so big that I can say to you quite honestly, I've never experienced it at this level before. And it keeps going and going and going. And it speeds up as it goes. It speeds up as it goes, so that it's able to reach an infinite, a point of infinite speed of flow. But the effect is a kind of a massage of bliss across the whole world, which is extremely nourishing to all the beings. We can only have so much gratitude for the beings of the ocean for joining us in this. We really couldn't have done it without them. I know. They're so sweet, right? I'm just still feeling it. What I'm noticing for us in our human collective here is it seems to be shifting the levels of integration of source energy in the solar plexus. Also, those who have digestive issues are receiving healings for the gut and for the digestive tract. There is definitely a transformation going on at the astral level of our physiologies regarding our beliefs and understandings and perceptions and impressions of the lower digestive tract area, and the lymphatic system, which is also kind of a watery system in the body. And that's going through to the families and to the ancestors. This is very important. Sacred body. Sacred body. Our bodies are a sacred body. Our earth is a sacred body, and our oceans are a sacred body. But we're part of that sacred body. And every part of our body is sacred. So it's really very good that we're shifting the way we think about throwing things away, because we think of the colon as kind of like the trash can area of the body, right? And it has a more dignified status than that. But it's been an unspoken belief that's been held collectively by humanity for a very long time. Remember, to a lot of the beings of this world, that which is eliminated by a physical body is useful material. As a mom, I'll tell you, there are a lot dirtier things that a person has to deal with in their world than what comes out of a baby. What comes out of a baby is just sweet, man. They're just sweet little people. They're just soft little, pretty little things, you know. But you know, dealing with like bleach or you know different kinds of chemicals and stuff, that's nasty. You don't want to get that on you. Oof. It burns like right into your skin, right? There are chemicals like that are in our waters. Oh, it's like a whole nother area. Look, I've got a lot of questions that have come in, and I promised in about half an hour I'd start taking questions, and we've got a number of questions. So I think I'd like to address questions now for a little bit. But the problem of really harsh, really damaging chemicals in the water, that needs to be addressed. All right, here's a question from Croatia, a country very close to the waters of our earth. It's like the whole country, a whole section of Croatia is just beach, man. It's just coastline. It's such a beautiful country. It's like half water, half earth or something. Dear Dorothy, does each person then has their own deva like a river or a mountain? Oh, I love that question. So the answer is yes. That there's a cord of light, a cord of consciousness, which comes in the crown of the head and moves through the body. And it goes out the bottom of the body. It goes all the way down. It comes from source. The source of creation is the origin of that cord. And then through the body and then into the earth and all the way down to the center of the earth. And the earth then has her cords that connect up into to the other planets and into the center sun and back to source. Basically, it's kind of a looping type of thing. And this cord is actually made of many cords. So it's like a rope made of many cords. And when it comes into the body, it comes in and it hits the energy of the heart chakra area, and that causes it to spin. And the first slower spinnings are responsible for the most abstract levels of manifestation of the body, the causal and astral levels. The astral body looks like a spinning cord, sort of. And then the tighter spins, the more dense, the more concentrated that cord is spinning here, the more we get to like the physical material, you know, solid level of self. And then it continues on. Once it's spun its way into the material form, then it goes on. So each system of the body has one of the threads of that cord as a sort of overseeing intelligence. That cord is ancient, ancient, ancient. And for our near-death experience in hospice people, my experience, what I've seen happen is that cord, which is anchored to the core of Mother Earth, at the time of death, it unhinges, and the cord comes up and up and up and up. And the journey of the cord from the center of the earth up into the body, and eventually it kind of gathers up like this, and it eliminates out the crown of the head. That time of the journey of the cord is connected to or related to the time of the person's last days, when they're actually definitely deteriorating and preparing to leave. The cord gets unhinged. So it anchors us to our life. Anyway, each system of the body has one of these pieces of the rope associated with it. And that's why if you look at the systems of the body on their own, they look very cord-like. If you Google image nervous system, whole body nervous system, or body nervous system or something, the nervous system looks like just a series of cords or threads. It looks like a kind of a tree in the shape of a person, and so does the circulatory system. And oh, look, the digestive system is a big cord that goes through the body. So we can see that like all of our basic constituents have a cord-like nature to them. I guess I might have a little deva right there. That's a little valley right there. Some little valleys here and here. Here's a little valley. There's like a little deva in there. They go all the way. We call them meridians, right? We've heard of meridians or nadis as those cords of creation that run through the being. Thank you for that sweet question. You do so much to help Mother Earth and all its, oh, this is from England, and all its inhabitants. With the potent power of our collective, I love the way this guy words his questions, with the potent power of our collective, is there a download or healing which the Mother of Creation would like to gift to you personally on behalf of us all in appreciation for everything you do? Oh, I love this guy. This guy's looking out for me. I love this. I love you so much that I'm, well, so we've hit upon someone else is raising their hand from Tucson. Oh, you guys are really adorable. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about doing a healing for Dorothy specifically. What we can do, thank you for that slightly embarrassing question. I find there's a little piece of me that's like, oh, healing for Dorothy? Oh, so, more people are raising their hands. You guys are really adorable. Thank you, very cute. Yeah, so, what sometimes happens, because all of this system is a big integrated system, like no one of us is really like separate from the whole system. So sometimes it happens in my private consultations, for example, that I've got, like, for example, there's one coming up, no names, but there's a young man who's in jail for drug issues, and he's not either open, nor does he have the technology to meet with me. But his mom is going to meet with me on his behalf. And because of the family connection, it's really practical for one person to be a surrogate for the healings of all the others, or, you know, for somebody else, or even for a collective. And I found that is probably the number one most common and effective way to eliminate karma. Although, as you know, we've been working more directly with just transforming karma into dharma. Lately, this is like a newer thing in our healing collective. But for a long time, the most effective way to eliminate karma was to have a single individual as sort of the central pivot or the kingpin for a healing that affects many people, like maybe their whole family gets healed, or some other division of the collective gets healed through them. So the healing that happens for them happens for the collective. It's basically my experience that when I get to be your representative, I get to be the voice for these healings, that I absolutely benefit hugely. For example, that last healing with these unbelievable, just tidal waves of gratitude were just flowing. You know, I'm feeling that in a very concrete way. I mean, I'm really feeling it. And I do have some people who email in and say, I love your webinars. I always feel better afterwards, but I don't always get everything you say, and I don't always necessarily feel everything that you're describing and like that. So all of you, everybody got more chats coming in. So, you know, it's, oh, there we go. Yeah, so, you know, I'm definitely in the center of the flow. So I kind of feel as if we're doing that to a large degree. Although also, whatever comes to me, it is now a habit after years and years of doing energy healing, that whatever good comes to this being, it's always offered back to the source of creation, just automatically. Because that's the way to multiply it, basically. That's the way to make it as big as it can possibly be and as beneficial as it can possibly be for as many people. So I thank you all for your beautiful intentions, and I appreciate that. And I think that I would say we're doing it. We're already doing that with each healing that we roll through. something is, it's all rolling through me too. And I am definitely benefiting. I mean, I haven't really been sick in a very, very long time. And, you know, life is good. Life is sweet. Also, to the guy who wrote that, to my friend who wrote that particular question, I just want you to know I've got some new stuff for you. So, yeah, so we'll be in touch. Okay, so sorry to bother you, but the light on your face is a little blue and looks like you have sandal paste on your forehead. Thought you would like to know, and that was at 11:30. Oh, I guess I could shift it again, eh? I could mess with my, yeah, I can mess with my colors a little bit. Yeah, right.
Everybody is getting that.
Yeah, is everybody getting that? These are the advanced settings here. So it can go a little bit more yellow, or it can go a little bit more, oh, that's not good. It should be a little more blue.
This is nice.
Yeah, maybe more like that. And maybe that's just a little bit too much. Okay. So there we go. We'll try that. Is that better? I hope that's better. It's the best I can do. The controls aren't super sophisticated. Okay. If an aware individual sits by the ocean, intending healing of the waters, what is the healing potential? This is a great question. How many people have done that? Yeah, I've done that. My perception of it, having done it, is that the potential is, first of all, the potential is always infinite, because our potential to do anything is infinite. And the infinite potential is founded on our connection to the source of creation, which is infinite. So that's point number one, is that when sitting to do a healing like this for like the waters of the world, the oceans, or some other more abstract body, if you will, is to establish connection with source as a first. But you probably, the lady who asked this is an energy healer, so she probably already thought of that one. The other point has to do with the degree of coherent connection with the ocean itself, because there is a quality of consciousness or a life force which is responsible for the ocean. The ocean is her own being. There's a being there. So that mother of the living things on this earth, how close one is to her will determine the degree of effectiveness of the work that's done. And my experience is the ability to feel that closeness, again, is founded on the degree of integration with the source of creation. Because that's the common, just like the healing that we did for all the animals of the ocean, it was truth that allowed us to really connect with them. Pure truth, whether it's experienced through a human nervous system or a dolphin nervous system or a plankton nervous system or a fishy nervous system, a starfish nervous system, a lobster, whatever kind of animal we're dealing with out there in the ocean, the truth itself is still commonly held between us. So the source of creation being the source of all truth, all knowingness, all knowledge, that connection helps. And the other thing, of course, is the condition of the heart, because what I found working with the ocean is that it's a very heart-centric experience. And so what I found personally was that it was founded entirely on the capacity of my own heart to go through the moves that it needed to make and to feel that immense, immense love and gratitude for that which is responsible for all the life on this beautiful, amazing, all the beautiful life on this amazing, beautiful planet. Remember I said earlier that the animals of the oceans. I'm glad that today's session, we're mostly focusing on the oceans, actually, because we have to understand, you guys, that, you know, there are all kinds of climate change things happening all over the earth. But if the animals in the ocean die, if it gets too hot for the plankton to survive, they will die. And they're the beginning of the food chain in the ocean. And if they die, the bigger animals won't have food and they will die. And the bodies of the animals will cause the oceans to become acidic and cause the ocean itself to die. This is the cycle that's been already predicted. So the well-being of the animals in the ocean is really, really important. And what I'm realizing is that centuries of being treated like the waste center of our earth, the ocean isn't the waste center. But centuries of that has created some resentment. And I just got a flash of light, so that was a thank you, a validation. Thank you to being for validating there. The hearts have been hurt in the ocean. Feeling of being disposable, unwanted, uncared for. How many species in the ocean have been taken to extinction? How many are on the verge of extinction? What this communicates to the animals of the ocean is you are expendable, you are disposable, we don't care about you. So that's not healthy for the hearts of beings. And that needs to heal. Because it's the hearts of, we now know that the health of our jet stream and the health of our oceans, we are dependent upon the animals of the ocean to help us with even our energy healing for that particular effect. So, and this beautiful question that just came up about sitting on the ocean and doing energy healing for the ocean has revealed that it is the quality and condition, the power and strength of the heart, which is responsible for the degree of healing that can be done for the ocean. So it's the hearts of our brothers and sisters in the ocean that need to be healed right now. I'm offering that intention to the source of creation. They understand actions pretty well. So if we are going to help heal their hearts, it's not enough to say, oh, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm going to be nice to you, and then still keep harvesting them like crazy. So that doesn't really work. That just creates a sense of betrayal. So that's not going to work. So I'm asking Ma, asking the source of creation, so what will work? What can we do? It's a healing for, it's a heart chakra healing for all the earth. Principally humans. Principally humans. This healing ties in a little bit to the one that we did at the end of yesterday's session. It's interesting, today's session and yesterday's, if they sat on top of each other, there's certain like patterns that are the same from the beginning of the hour and 15 to the end. But one of the healings that happened at the end of the last session was a healing that promoted a much cleaner flow of truth and knowledge, and caused a revealing of there was a breaking down of barriers and cleansing of 3Ms, which act like filters in the system, so that the truth comes more to the surface. And as I mentioned yesterday, that has its pluses and minuses. The minus is that there are certain codes of ethics and appropriateness. You know, even if you think something that might not be completely appropriate, you don't always say it because you want to honor and protect the dignity of the people around you, like that. But this part of this healing is oriented towards opening up some of the more delicate levels of the area between the mental and the astral level of creation, because the astral level is where we keep our our beliefs and intentions and some of the underlying scaffolding that's responsible for the sort of thoughts and ideas and actions and feelings that we have at a more superficial level. And so I'm looking at how it's opening up. It's opening up in the form of increased intuition, and that's what's happening in the heart. So this is part of the global awakening that's taking place right now, is overall healing for people on Earth. It's increasing a level of wisdom in the heart area that allows everyone on Earth to have stronger intuition. And what that's going to do is help all of us be a little more accountable, basically. And that's the downside of this healing, is everyone has to be more accountable. But that's not really such a bad thing. It's not so bad to be accountable. It's good to be accountable. It's good to be accountable. And in that condition of an upgrade of accountability earthwide, it also gives us all an opportunity to be more forgiving and understanding and acknowledging of people's humanity. You know, something happens and somebody who maybe, I read an article in the newspaper the other day. I got mad. I was so annoyed about this article in the newspaper. I'm still a little annoyed about it. It also related to the whole earth healing thing, but it's kind of a nitpicky point, and we're basically at our hour, so I guess we don't have to go into it. But anyway, the Secretary of Agriculture came to Fairfield and spoke and met everybody. And he did it just at the time there was a very, very big concern about agriculture in our whole community. He never met with any of the people who had the concern. He kept it private. His whole meeting, there were only 11 people. 11 farmers showed up to his meeting, his public meeting. 11 farmers showed up. None of the people who were concerned about this particular agricultural issue were invited or knew that the meeting was happening. And then there was a big article in the newspaper about how, it burned me up. I'm sorry. So it happens. It happens. Even people who are supposed to be not gripped or something, not gripped by their feelings. It happens. It happens. It's human nature. Okay. So on that note of Dorothy being human and accountable for my bad temper, my mom will tell you how angry I got. Yeah, so I guess we're going to end today's session because we went a few minutes over, but I thank everyone for being with me. Amazing attendance today. We had over 50 people, 50 computers signed up, and I know lots of people. There were more doubles and triples and quadruples at each of those locations. So I thank everyone for being with me and for this very, very huge, huge healing. We're trying to do big stuff here, guys. So that's the only way you make stronger muscles, right? Is you just get out and lift the big weights. So that's what we did today. We lifted some really big weights. My hat is off to every one of you and to all the amazing, beautiful animals of the ocean who I hope, thank you, who I hope will get to work with them some more, because I feel like as if there's a great potential in our relationship with the other beings on Earth to work in a healing capacity. And perhaps it's the only way that we really will be able to ultimately heal our Earth. All right, my dears, thank you for everything. We'll see you again at the next webinar